Hey everyone. So we are in our next module, which is all about how you support your claims. And I really do think this is an extremely important module for us because so often as a speaker, we are worried about how we can appear credible to our audience. And that really does become a super important component of giving a speech. And the more credible we are, the more our audience is likely to believe us. And the more likely our audience is to give us like good feedback. And generally, that's going to make the speech process a lot simpler for us. So I want to talk about what's going to happen in this upcoming module. So there's two ways that we're going to get that credibility. The first is the credibility of your information. That's the first thing that I want you to spend some time with this week, is really trying to figure out, how do I find the right information? So I think that we have reached a point in our society where there is information about everything, but that does not mean that it's always the best information, and it certainly doesn't mean that it's always true. So it's super important for us as speakers, if we are going to give information to an audience, we need to make sure that that information is accurate and trustworthy. So it's a really big importance to find credible information. That's going to mean that we need to work on our research skills. That means that even if you are using Google, that it's not always going to be the first hit. And sometimes it's better to make our Google searches a little bit more specific. And then being willing to avoid clickbait and having click restraint, which means that we might want to scroll down, do a cursory view of the source itself to see if it's worthwhile. The second thing that I want to talk about this week is about the credibility that you gain from including this in your speech. Your audience has a natural willingness to trust you, but one of the ways that you're going to increase your credibility within your speech is by citing your information. Citing sources is one of the most crucial components of a speech. As a speaker, I'm not required to know everything about everything, but when I do speak, it is important for me to cite information that I had to research for my audience. Two things are going to happen here. One, your audience is going to know that you took the time to research this issue. And two, when they hear it coming from hopefully a quality source, they're going to assume that you are a credible speaker. And so we want to do that. So pay attention closely in this module. Make sure you're reading the coordinating texts and all the information in the module, because we want to make sure that any time that we bring in information, we cite it. And we want to make sure that we're citing it as we do it. So pay attention. It may not be exactly what you had been taught before or what you would think. There are some people who have been taught to just put all of their source citations at the end of a slideshow, and we're not going to do it that way. We want to make sure that as we are presenting information, we are providing that citation. The way that I tell it to students often is that this is like if I were writing a paper, if I were writing an English paper or a history research assignment or something like that, as my audience, my teacher, or whoever was reading my paper, they would be able to see that I have brought in outside information because I might use quote marks, I might have a parenthetical citation. They would be able to see that in the moment. In a speech, we don't have that visual copy of what you're doing. So we want to make sure that every time we bring in information, we are making an oral source citation. This is different than the type of citation that you're going to include in an outline if you have to turn it in, or if you were writing a paper, it's different than that. The oral source citation is going to be really specific. That's explained on a couple of the other pages in this upcoming module. So just make sure that you take a really close look at that. The main thing here is that we want to be sure to use citations properly. We want to make sure that the information that we're using is credible, because all of this is about making us better as speakers. And if we are credible, we feel credible, and then our audience perceives us as credible, then we're in for a good run. So hopefully you're progressing well in the course, and this should be a great addition to your skills as a speaker.